We all know that stress is bad for us, and this is something we get told very often. However, it's all too easy to write this off as being a minor nuisance or frustration rather than anything to really worry about. We all get stressed from time to time, right? In reality though, this is the wrong way to think about stress. While it is fairly commonplace, that is not to say that it isn't serious. In fact, stress is incredibly serious and can cause severe problems both in the short term and long term. Stress can shorten your lifespan, ruin your enjoyment, cause serious illness, shrink your brain, hurt your performance, ruin your relationships. Stress is what we feel when we're overworked, when we're dreading something that's about to happen, or when we're generally unable to relax and stay calm due to outside or inside factors influencing our thoughts. But it actually goes beyond this. Stress is a basic physiological reaction that is designed to help us focus and survive. In itself, it is not a bad thing and is actually rather adaptive. The problem is that it has been taken out of context, which means the positive effects become outweighed by the negative. Essentially, stress is what causes the fight or flight response. This is a physiological response to perceived danger, designed to improve our chances of survival. If you were to see a lion, for example, this would trigger a cascade of effects collectively resulting in the stress response. This begins when we observe danger or experience fear. Increased activity in our brain causes the release of adrenaline, as well as dopamine, norepinephrine and cortisol, our stress hormones. These then trigger a number of physiological changes, increasing our heart rate, making us breathe more quickly and making us more acutely focused on the potential threat. A list of the symptoms should include increased heart rate, rapid, shallow breathing, muscle contraction, tunnel vision, heightened sensitivity, increased blood viscosity, suppression of the pain response, suppression of the immune system, suppression of the digestive system, dilation of the pupils, dilation of the blood vessels, reduction in prefrontal cortex activity, temporohypofrontality. In the short term, this is good for us. In the short term, these things help us to evade danger and win combative situations. Increased muscle tension makes us stronger. Increased blood viscosity makes our blood more likely to clot in case of an injury. Dilated pupils let more light in to improve our vision. Suppression of secondary functions means that more blood can be sent to the muscles and the brain. When we are stressed, it effectively makes us less intelligent. This is due to the reduction in prefrontal activity, which in turn is designed to make us more focused and alert. Essentially, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for forward planning, creative thinking and other high-order brain activity. When you are being chased by a lion though, it is really not the time to be thinking about the meaning of life. So shutting down this part of the brain and placing your focus on feedback from your senses makes much more sense. Of course, that's not particularly useful in the workplace though, and this is why the stress response is so seriously unhelpful when we have to give a presentation, answer a question on the spot or go on a date. This is when we lose all articulation and start stammering and saying useless things. Just understanding these factors, you can hopefully see that stress isn't a bad thing necessarily, rather it is a useful and required part of a normal, healthy, functioning body. In fact, as we've discussed, a little stress is necessary in order to help you feel more alert, more focused and more productive. If we never had even a small amount of stress hormones in our system, then we would spend all our time highly rested and too laid back to get any actual work done. The key is to make sure that those stress levels stay at this optimal level, as well as to try and get your natural cycles to line up with the times when you need to be most productive during the day. One very simple way to keep your stress at bay is to avoid letting your blood sugar drop too low. We've already seen that low blood sugar triggers the release of cortisol and other stress hormones, and so it follows that by avoiding low blood sugar, we can avoid this fate. The best way to manage your blood sugar levels is to avoid consuming simple carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the best source of blood sugar for the human body, but the problem is that in their simple form, they release energy into the blood much too quickly. This results in a sudden spike in sugar, which then gets taken up and leaves you drained again. What's more, is that this causes the release of melatonin, the sleep hormone, as we've seen earlier. Not ideal for working. If you have a breakfast that is made up of pancakes and syrup, then it will wake you up and make you feel good in the morning, but an hour later you'll start to run low on energy and that will cue the release of cortisol. So instead, try consuming a source of calories that will release the sugar more gradually into your bloodstream. A great choice is some form of complex carbohydrate, such as oats. Stay comfortable. Comfort is fantastic for reducing stress, and this has been shown in studies to help boost creativity. It only takes your keys to be digging into your pocket, for example, for your body to consider you as uncomfortable and potentially being damaged. Thus, you will find that if you can sit in a more supportive and comfortable chair and also ensure the temperature is right and you are surrounded by things that put you at ease, plants have been shown to do this well for most people, then you will start to feel a lot calmer, even when you're at work and other stresses are being thrown at you. Spend time away from screens. Computers, smartphones and television are all great. They're entertaining and they're great for productivity. Unfortunately though, they're also very bad for us when it comes to stress hormones. We've already discussed how light from screens can trigger the release of cortisol, and we've seen that the constant messages and alerts essentially trigger a series of small stress responses while we're surfing the web. Another tip is to take time off just before bed. If you aim to have a restorative and restful night's sleep, then you need to give yourself time to wind down just before you hit the sack. Taking time away from computers is one of the best ways to do this, so why not have a bath before bed with some candles instead? Or read by a more natural type of light? Give yourself half an hour of screen off time and you'll find you get to sleep much quicker and feel more restored in the morning. No can do? If you absolutely can't separate yourself from your gadgets at the end of the day, then try using software that will reduce the amount of blue light coming from the screen. Redshift technology will help you block the most damaging wavelengths from your devices and thereby create a more restful light. An alternative is to wear blue blocking shades, which can block all blue light in your environment before bed. Get rid of your alarm. You know what really isn't helping your stress levels? Your morning alarm. The reason alarms tend to choose from a generic range of sounds is that bleeps and ringing sounds are unnatural. These sounds don't occur in nature and thus we are attuned to them, and they make us naturally sit up and take notice. In other words, they trigger a stress response. Rethink your commute. Commuting to work is one of the worst things you can do for your stress levels throughout the day. Did you know, for example, that a typical commute will trigger huge amounts of what is considered to be the only universal fear? So what is this universal fear? It's things moving quickly toward you. Across all cultures and all demographics, moving something quickly towards a person's face will cause them to recoil and to see an increase in their heart rate and their stress response. Now think about a typical commute filled with people moving rapidly towards you, lots of noise, lots of pollution and generally huge amounts of chaos. Before your day has even begun, you'll be experiencing huge amounts of stress. This might be outside of your control. But if it is within your control, then make sure you do anything you can to avoid this kind of commute. Even just going in an hour earlier to avoid the rush hour may be a good choice. Rethink your morning coffee. You know what else really isn't helping your stress in the morning? That cup of coffee. When you drink coffee, you are essentially experiencing the stress response in a cup. That's because coffee works by triggering something akin to a stress response. It starts by mimicking a molecule we all have in our brains called adenosine. Adenosine is a byproduct of the energy systems in the body, and it builds up over time as we are active. The more you use your brain power, the more of this substance accumulates. The problem is that adenosine is also an inhibitory neurotransmitter. The more adenosine builds up, the tireder we get and the less active the brain becomes. This is one of the reasons that we find ourselves feeling tireder and less cognitive able as the day drags on. Drink caffeine though, and the brain's adenosine receptors get confused. They absorb caffeine instead of adenosine, and this means the adenosine has nowhere to go and can't work. This in turn gives you an instant boost in energy levels by making you feel more awake and focused. This also leads to a general increase in brain activity though, and this is where the stress response comes in. The brain notices this sudden wakefulness, and what do you know, it assumes that something very important must be going on. Once you can do all this, you'll find your mood improves, your productivity skyrockets, and your health is greatly enhanced in both the long and short term. Stress less, live more.